The job market is changing. People used to be at companies for 30 years, and now it's more like 3 years, 2 to 3 years, and then they're jumping ship to another company. And you might find yourself in a weird spot that you were in one industry, and now that industry is no longer the way that it used to be. And you see there's opportunity, like cost of living is getting a lot more expensive, and you want to transition into another career field, and in particular, a tech career field. Whether you want to be a QA engineer, whether you want to do software engineering, whether you want to do cybersecurity, DevOps, cloud engineering, whatever the case may be. You want to transition away from whatever it is that you're doing now into the tech space, but there's one thing that haunts a lot of people. What is that? Well, what I believe haunts a lot of people is having to learn how to code. Some people even try to transition to jobs that say, "Oh, can I get into cybersecurity where there's not any coding involved?" Because the thought of coding and algorithms and figuring things out scares them. All right. So I want to talk to you about that today, and I want to help you to share some tips and tricks that I use when I was learning how to code, and when I'm still learning how to code in different languages or doing things that are more intensive. I want to help you to see how you can do it, and maybe some of the things that I do can help you, because I haven't seen anyone else do it online the way that I do it, and hopefully it helps. And you let me know what you think. All right. So welcome to another episode of Software Explorations, Concept and Overviews, hosted by your shooty tech coach Ralph, where we're engineered to win. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different than normal. I normally have a presentation that I'm taking you through, but today I wanted to show you how I have managed to learn to code, and how I've been able to make it into the tech industry for almost 20 years now. So that is my goal. That is what we're going to do. I'm going to show some different examples. I'm going to show you a course that I took. We're gonna use Python for today, but it can be applied to any language that you want to learn, and it's really going to be very, very preliminary. But how I go about it so that you don't get discouraged, because it can be very, very discouraging when you want to learn something new. You want to learn how to write some code, but you don't know where to start. And then as these jobs are going away that you are so used to, and people just tell you, just learn to code. I think it is demeaning on two sides, right? On one side is not valuing whatever you spent your life learning and saying, "Oh well, just throw it away and just learn to code, just learn to code." But the other side is demeaning on is the people who actually went to school and they spent time and they studied this and they have built whole careers. And then you say, "You know what? This person who is doing something totally different, they can just learn to code and learn how to do all the things that you've been doing." It is not easy. Tech, I say this often, tech is hard. It is not easy to just learn how to code, but is it possible? Absolutely. I mean, after all, I was able to do it. I've been able to learn how to write code, and that's why I want to share with you some of the tips and tricks and some insights that I use. But I do want to address this though. I think the biggest problem that people have when they're learning something new, when they're learning how to code, is people do not like to ask for help. They think that they can just, figure it out, and then they get discouraged, and they get stuck, and they go off the course and they never come back to it. I understand how people can be reluctant to ask for help, because it can feel a bit embarrassing when you are admitting that you don't know how to do something. But I do not want you to be embarrassed, because guess what? I would rather you face a little bit of embarrassment and succeed, instead of face embarrassment and then run away and never come back to something that, it might just be a little roadblock that you're experiencing, but then you can be one of the greatest software engineers, cybersecurity people, DevOps, QA, whatever the case may be. You can be one of the greatest to ever walk the face of this earth. All right. So let's get to it. So that's the plan for today. We're going to get to it, and I'm going to be using a Python course that I took by Dr. Angela Yu, 100 Days of Python. I have a link for that course in the description in case you are interested in learning Python. but it is a really good course. That's what I learned. That's what I used to learn Python. And I'll tell you this: when I was learning Python, it was for a totally different reason. Me and a friend of mine were going to use that to work on some API type stuff. We ended up not doing that, but I was able to land a job last year at a company doing QA, and they primarily use Python. So that has been that was great. So you never know when you're going to need the things that you're learning, but that's why I say start to learn, and then it's going to take you into that direction. All right. But with that being said, we're going to get started. Let's get to it. So what we're going to do, I'm going to show you the Python course that we're going to be using in this example that I took last year. Or actually, no, I started taking it in January of 2022. All right. And I've been using Python now ever since then. I already knew how to code in Java, HTML, CSS, a little bit of JavaScript, but I needed to learn Python for something I wanted to get into. And this is a great course. The instructor of the course is great as well. But and this is what's in the course, right? And I'm using this course to show you like what it's going to take you through, and then I'm going to show you like I'm going to solve one of the examples or things that like the little projects in the course, and then I'm going to expand on that on how I used that to learn a lot more as I continue learning different coding languages and getting better at it. All right. So in this course, it takes you with starting to print Python stuff in the console. So everything has a practice that's associated with it. Okay. And then you're going to start doing so after you do all of that, doing variables, data types, all this stuff. And this might sound totally foreign to you. It might not make a lot of sense, right? Control flows, logical operators, randomization, and Python lists. I get it. That sounds scary, but guess what? Here's the biggest thing when learning how to code, right? All this stuff that you see here on day one, all the stuff that you see from day 2 all the way to day 100, right? All the way to day 100. Totally forget about it. Act like these don't even exist, right? Your only goal is to focus on day 1, right? Your only goal is to focus on day 1. You do not need to worry about everything else, because if you look at everything else and you don't know what any of this means, you're going to be scared, you're going to be overwhelmed, and you're not going to want to do it. And I think that we all have the capacity and the capability of learning this, but because we see this daunting task, right, of 100 days and creating all this type of stuff, and we don't even know if we look at day 2, we don't even know what is a data type and what does it mean to manipulate a string. Like, is it an actual physical string that we're going to be manipulating? What in the world is going on? And then control flows and logic operators, that sounds scary. And then we see on day 1, we're spending an hour at this, and day 2, we're spending 58 minutes, and then day 3, it's an hour and 15 minutes. And this is just a video time. This is not actually time working on like practicing the code. So that sounds extremely scary. Okay. So my biggest advice to you is forget about all the other days. Focus on day 1. Okay. And then when you're focused on day 1, focus on one video, one section at a time. So watch what you're going to get from this course. And then you just start going down here, right? Downloading. So download and set up PyCharm. I use PyCharm. That's one of my favorite IDEs to use. Printing to the console in Python. You just focus on these little things, right? And you go from, and if you get stuck, then you reach out to maybe people in that Discord, reach out to me on a live stream, whatever the case may be. But you reach out, you Google and you search and you try to figure it out. But ask for help, okay? And so we're focusing on day 1. And here's another tip and trick that I do, right? It says 100 days of Python, but ignore the 100-day part, because it's going to take you way more than 100 days. And the way that I have my strategy, My strategy goes outside of that 100 days so that you can actually learn and not rush through it. So don't have a goal of 100 days. Have a goal of spending time, maybe an hour every day. Some days it might be longer, some days it might be shorter, but spend, like, let's say for instance, you go through day one, right? And you do everything. And then day two, you go and you practice what you did on day one. That's one of the strategies that I employ. And I always try to build off what I did before. So it's not like, let's say day one, they're doing one thing and day two, they're doing something else. I try to incorporate what I'm doing in day two, what I did in day one, because that's how you're going to build that repetition. If you're like in the gym, you're building those reps. So what I'm saying is take it slowly. Take it slowly. You're not in a sprint, you're in a marathon. All right. So let's jump into this course so that you can see how I go about doing this. Okay. So let's take a look at this example. This is one of the little practices or little projects that they have within the course, right? And so this one is printing practice, probably like one of the very first lessons in the course, right? It says, write a program that uses print statements to print the following recipe into the output console. The text to be printed is already there. You just need to make it into code. Your code should print all 5 lines exactly the same as the example output below. Make sure that you don't change any of these existing text as everything, punctuation and casing all needs to match, right? So being that I come from a quality assurance background, I'm always thinking about, okay, things that are testable. And the way that they get these to validate is they're running different tests. Okay. So right now we need to get it to say mix 500 grams of flour, 10 grams of yeast, and 30 milliliters of water in a bowl. On the next line, knead the dough for 10 minutes. On the next line, add 3 grams of salt. On the next line, leave to rise for 2 hours. And lastly, bake at 200 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes, okay? So they're giving us some code to start off with, right? And as we see here, it says print, and it says 100, or it says like the first line, second line. But then, so what I always do, the very first thing that I'm doing when I'm learning how to do these coding languages, because they have pre-existing test cases, right? In this course. So the very first thing that I do is I do run tests, and I am expecting it to fail. Okay, I'm expecting it to fail because they wouldn't just give it to you or it passed. But this one says invalid syntax. So if I did not know what it meant by invalid syntax, I would say, okay, you know what? Let me find out what that actually means. And this is the key for me. Like, you'll see me on my live streams, and I get an error, I quickly Google that error, and usually I get a Stack Overflow. And so what I do, I just copy the error, and I'm going to open up another browser, another tab, and I'm going to just do Python, the language that I'm using, and I'm going to put in invalid syntax, and I search, and the AI overview says a syntax error. Invalid syntax in Python means that your code has mistake in its structure or grammar. There are a few common causes and how to fix them, and they give us an example with hello world. So it says print hello and then hello world, but there's not the closing quotation mark. So you fix that by adding it, okay? This other example in Python, if x is greater than 5 and then nothing happens, for this example, add the colon, and if I go down to Stack Overflow, why do I get invalid syntax in a line that is perfectly valid syntax, right? So that's the very first things that I do is I search when I don't know something, I Google it, right? So let's go back to here. And now for me to continue this, I'll just be like, okay, what is going on? Let me get it to work. So you see how this has print, and then all of a sudden here it drops off because this is not Python code on these 2 lines. So what I would need to do is, all right, let's say print, open that up, and then match that, and then the last one, because and I like my strategy is running my test early and often. So that's why you see when the first time I come in here, I click run test. I'm expecting a failure. It fails. Okay. Then I say, okay, so I did that. I'm going to run the test again. And now look at this. If I undo what I had before, right? We put it back to this, and I'm going to run it again. I have my invalid syntax at line 4. So I know that there's an issue in here, okay? So now if I put back how I had it and I run it again, now it tells me my invalid syntax is at line 5, so I'm making progress. I'm making progress on my invalid syntax error. So now on line 5, if I go ahead and I do the same thing, right? And I click run test, now they all pass. So my strategy is to run my tests early and often. Every time I make a little change, maybe I update a line or something, I run my test and I see if my error message changes. If my error message doesn't change, then, changing even to the point of a different line or a different position in the line, then I know something's still wrong and I still need to work at it, right? So hopefully like this little, very, very basic example, but the very first thing that you're gonna do when you're learning how to code is going to be printing hello world or something very similar to that. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into the first way that I start to like, that helps me understand the learning, like the code base that I'm learning, right? But the next thing, so after we get through day 1, right? Now, because this is like, so going through this Udemy course is like we are in school and we're doing like 5 plus 5, or we're doing some reading comprehension, right? But after you're done with day 1, it's not over. It's not over because you just finished day 1 of the Udemy course, but now you need to practice. It's kind of like in your textbooks where in school, in your math textbooks in school, they would give you the answer to the even problems. And then your teacher would say, okay, now I need you to do the odd number problems so that you can get that practice in. So when it comes time to take a test, you're ready. Okay. So what I like to do, I like to go to a website called Code Wars, right? I like to go to Code Wars. Let me pull it up for you. All right. So I like to go to a website called Code Wars to get my practice in, right? I was using it a lot last year in the morning shows to, for part of Coffee and Kata to wake up the mind, to get ready to code, to get ready for the workday, little practice problems. So this one is a very, very, very basic Python problem that we're going to be handling, the infamous hello world. Okay. So this one wants us to make a simple function called greet that returns the most famous hello world. Everyone is familiar with hello world, right? However, they want us to create a function called greet. And one thing I like about Code Wars is that they have the test function where, like I said, the very first thing that I do is when I come into one of these projects, one of these challenges to figure out, I do test because I know it's going to fail. And it says cannot import the import name greet from solution. Okay. So, and this is the solution right here. It is trying to import the function greet from solution, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create the function of defining, and it is greet. And I'm just going to leave it like that, right? Let's see what happens. So it's expecting a parenthesis. So I'm going to put the parentheses and I'm going to click test again. And now it's expecting a colon. So in order to open the function, I got to put a colon, and now I'm going to click test. And then it's expecting something else, an indentation. So as you go through your Python course, you're going to be learning about how Python is relying on indentation and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the next line and I'm just going to write pass, right? Because I just want to see if the function is going to be created and go from there. Okay. So now I click test and it says that one passed, but one failed because there's 2 tests that it's trying to verify. So the one that passed, the greet function, make sure the greet exists, right? So here, making sure greet exists, and it's saying trying to make sure that greet exists. So if I was to change this name to great, right, and I do test, then it's going to fail because it can't even import greet. Okay, so so we're going to change this back over here, and we're going to say we're going to run it again. Like I said, I like to run early and often, early and often. So now we have making sure greet exists, okay, but it says testing that that it returns hello world. Greet does not return hello world. None should equal hello world, right? So because I'm passing pass, there's nothing to confirm. So we're gonna do return, and then we're going to say hello world exclamation point. And now when I click test again, now all my tests pass. So one trick that I do is I use the test that they give us, that they give us, and I make and then I keep making modifications and keep running it over until the test pass. Now, this is a pretty simple example, right? But I want to take on a little bit more complex example. And in that more complex example, you'll see how I kind of work backwards so that I start off with the solution and getting a test to pass, but because it has to be a little bit dynamic and there's going to be many tests that are running, then you get a one static test passing, and then you start to modify your code until everything is passing. All right. So let's see if I can find this test over here. So in this one, this is a pretty, like, you get this challenge pretty early on when you're learning Python or any language to be exact, but it's called the FizzBuzz challenge, right? And it's going to say, so the description, return an array, and if you are brand new to coding, some of the things that I'm going to be reading, you're going to be learning them soon, so don't get discouraged. But I want you to see how I use this to, like, my strategy to learn how to code easier and better. Okay, so the description for this challenge is return an array containing the number from 1 to n, where n is a parametered value. Replace certain values. However, if any one of the following conditions are met, if the value is a multiple of 3, use the value fizz instead. If the value is a multiple of 5, use the value buzz instead. If the value is a multiple of 3 and 5, use the value fizz buzz instead. So n will never be less than 1. So method calling example. So if you passed in the number 3 to the fizz buzz, you'd get 1, 2, and then fizz, because 3 is fizz. Same way if you pass in 5, you'd get 1, 2, fizz, 4, buzz. And then if you get to 15, then you'd get fizz buzz. All right. So let's do this one. And that way you'll get a good idea of how I train myself in these situations. Okay. So, all right. So we already read this instruction, and like I said, the very, very first thing that I do is I run the tests. Okay, so if we look at the test real quick, it says should fizzify 10 numbers correctly. So it's expecting to have 1, 2, fizz, 4, buzz, fizz, 7, 8, fizz, buzz, right? Fails with 10 numbers. All right. Okay, so that means 1, 2, and then 3 is going to be fizz. 4 is going to be 4 is for 5 is going to be buzz. 6 is going to be fizz. 7, 8, 9 is fizz because it's by 3, and then buzz. All right. So, like I said, the very, very first thing that I do is I run my tests, and they're all going to fail because guess what? I have absolutely no code there. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is believe it or not, I'm just going to copy this right here, and I'm just going to do return that, right? And now you're going to see one of my tests pass. Okay, but that is not the solution. But why am I doing it that way? Because that is how I'm going to work my way backwards. Okay, so watch this. Test. And guess what? This first test passes, but none of the other ones fail. Why does none of the other ones fail? Because when I'm passing in 30, it's not going to passing in 10, like this is hard coded, right? So that's not going to work. But that's my starting point. I want to see one test pass. And then I'm going to work my code to get the rest to pass. Okay? So and another thing I like to do too is I like to modify it a bit to work slowly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I want to return. So we're going to be returning in array. Okay, so I'm going to start by saying fizz buzz array equals open array, right? Because whatever code that I have in here, as long as I have this as the return, I'm always going to get this to pass. So I can write a bunch of code, you know, fizz equals 0, whatever, doesn't matter, right? But not gonna do that. So we have this, and I like to add print statements just to see what's going on, right? So I'm gonna put this in here, and I'm just gonna run it. Like I said, you write a couple of lines of code and you run it. And the log is down here. It shows that I'm just printing out an array. Okay. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, let's say I want when I count a number. So I'll say, so we're going to do a loop, right? So we'll say, what is the loop? All right, so I just said for I in range of from 1 to n, print I, right? So I'm going to run that again. Oops. And you see syntax error. I need a colon, add my colon. All right, so you see everything is listed out, right? All the way to 30. Okay. And I'm going to say, now I need, what I want to happen is if the number is 3, I wanted to say buzz, right? So if I equals 3, then print, and we're gonna say, so threes are fizz, right? So I'm gonna say fizz, and now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get rid of this passing test, and I'm gonna say return fizz buzz array, all right? So now I'm gonna run it, because now that I know what I need to do, we're gonna run it, and we have fizz, and then we have 3, right? So what I want to do, I want to say an else statement, print I, okay? So if we run it again, and now we have 1, 2, fizz, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're making progress. But the last thing that we need to do is we need to add the to the array, right? So we're going to say fizz buzz array dot append I, okay? And that's just saying add I to the fizz buzz array, and we're gonna say fizz buzz array if it's 3, append fizz. Okay? So now if we run it again, and I'm just going to, at the end, I'm going to print the fizz buzz array. Okay, no, actually we don't, fill with 10 numbers. Okay, so we're good because I don't even have to print it because in the result, it says failed with 10 numbers. 1, 2, fizz, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And it's expecting, so we should do a n plus 1, right? So we run that again. So the n plus 1 is to make it get to 10, okay? So, but now we only have fizz. So we're making progress because before we started with just having it hard coded. Okay. So next up, we're going to say, okay, let's check for the 5, right? So let's say else or elif for else if I is equal to 5, right? And we say print buzz, and I'm going to say fizz buzz array append buzz, right? And a couple of lines of code. We wrote 3 lines of code. We are going to run it again. Like I said, run it early and often. So now we have fizz and we have buzz. Okay. And now in the test is saying fizz, buzz, but then nothing else for the other multiples of 3 or of 10. Okay. So now the next thing we're gonna do is there is something called modulo, which is like remainder. So like I'm saying, if this sounds all too complex for you right now, you're gonna get to it. But I just want the key to this video is for you to see the strategy that I employ to figure this stuff out. Okay, it's all about strategy, critical thinking and strategy. That's the key, right? So with the modulo, we're gonna say so with the modulo is like it divides by a number. And it lets you know what the remainder is. The modulo lets you know what the remainder is, okay? So we'll say, let me see, how do I do modulo again? So I'll say if I modulo 3 equals 0, I think it's like that, then return to me fizz, right? So we're just gonna leave it as that for now. And let's run it, because I'm not 100% sure that that's the right coding syntax, but let's see. Oh, look at that. Look at that. So now, so if I modulo 3 has a remainder of 0, then print fizz. So in our results, we have 1, 2 fizz, 4 buzz, 6 is fizz, 7, 8, 9 is fizz. So we're getting closer. Look at this right now, right? So so it fails with 10 numbers, 1, 2, fizz, 4, buzz, the buzz is for 5, fizz, 7, 8, fizz, 10. So this is the last one that is causing this one to fail. So we basically recreated the test that we had passing by hard coding it into just about passing it now. So now, what is the next step? What is the next step? So the next step would be if I is modulo 5 equals 0, then print buzz. Okay, so now we're going to test that again. It's testing it again, and now look at that. How do you like that? Our first test actually passed now. So we went from having it hard coded into writing it in code and having it pass, right? However, we still have some failing tests, right? We have some failing tests. So let's close this, the one that's passing, close that out. And this one is failing because guess what? The multiples of 3 and 5 should say fizz buzz, not just fizz or buzz, but it's just saying fizz because it's doing the first check and say, oh, this is a multiple of 3, so that's going to be fizz. But it's also a multiple of 5, so we need to say fizz buzz. So how do we fix that? How do I fix that? Well, in that case, I needed to check that 15 or anything that is a multiple of, you know what, before we even get to that, right? So we're going to say, all right, so if I is equal to 15, we're going to do it the exact same way that we did it before, right? I'm going to say print fizz buzz, and then I'm going to put a else if statement on this, right? So now when I run this, when it gets to 30, at least 15, because we're just saying if it equals to 15, it should say fizz buzz. The other ones that are multiples of 3 and 5, those will still say like whatever the number is, right? Or actually, it'll still say fizz because that's the first thing that it's doing. So let's run the test. And now look at that. 15 says fizz buzz, but however, 30 still says fizz. And that's why that test is still failing, because on 30, it's expecting fizz buzz. If we look at over here, so we have the first fizz buzz, but 30 still says fizz, and we need to say fizz buzz. So what I'm going to do is like we did for the first one, we're going to do a modulo of 15, or not 15, but of, we're going to say not of 15, we're going to say if I is equal to a modulo of 3, and put that in parentheses, right? Or, right, I is equal to so if, actually no, it should be and, not and. So and if I is if a modulo of 3 has no remainder, and if I divided by 5 has no remainder, then I want to print fizz buzz. So that's the thinking that I'm having in my mind right now. Okay, and that should equal fizz buzz. So let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. I mean, I could be off. I could be off, right? Because I haven't done this fizz buzz in a while. But let's give it a run. And we have, let's see, it fails, but why does it fail? So we have fizz buzz. Let's see. It says 1 all the way down to 29. And then, so on the 29th one, it's not getting it. Okay. Oh, okay. That's okay. See, and that's how we learn, because now I see an error. I'm like, okay, that should have worked. But I look at my code. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't add it to the array, to the list. So we're gonna do fizz buzz array dot append to add it to it, and we're gonna say fizz buzz. All right. So now when we run it again, everything passes. Everything passes. So from 100 all the way up to 100, it's doing everything that it's supposed to do, right? And that's why I love, like I say, run the test early and often, and you just work your way backwards through there. So now I'm going to do a little bit of code cleanup. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of this. Oops. And get rid of that, right? I'm going to get rid of this printing fizz buzz array. We don't need that. And I'm going to run it again to make sure that when I refactored it, nothing else broke. Everything still passes. And are there better ways? Like, I'm sure like there will be people who come here, oh, you did it this way, but guess what? This is for the person who's learning how to code, and even this is still a bit advanced, right? But I just wanted you to see the way that my mind works when I'm like, all right, let me work my way backwards. I get one test to pass, and then I just start to like do little modifications. I'm printing out a lot of the statements, like a lot of things that I'm doing, I'm printing it out so I can see it visually. I don't want to write a bunch of code and I can't see anything. After I know it's working, then I can get rid of my print statements. So then lastly, I'm just going to click attempt here, and it passes, right? It did a bunch of random tests. So it used n as, so up to 377, up to 14, 380, all these different tests, right? And they all passing, a bunch of different tests, and they're all passing. So that's my approach to when I'm learning how to code. And I think that with that approach, it can help you as well. All right. So I'm going to leave it as that for today, but let me know if this was valuable. I'm just going back to full screen. So yeah, that's it for today. Hopefully that added some valuable insight to my strategy of learning how to code. When I'm learning how to code, I take a very, very slow approach. I do the project in the Udemy courses that I take, and then I go and I find other places to practice. and then I run my tests early and often. One last thing that I like to do, when I'm taking these courses is that I like to also build a corresponding project, no matter how small it might be, right? It doesn't matter. Like, but I'll say, okay, so what I'm doing is we are, printing something. So I'm gonna print a bunch. Like, all right. I just want to build something where I can start off by printing, and then what I learn in the next day or the next part of the course is I'm going to add that to my little project, something that's meaningful to me, so that at some point it can become something much bigger. Okay, so what I'm going to leave you with for today, right? That the process is slow, but you can learn a lot. And I think that it's well worth it. Your goal should be to retain the information, not necessarily the syntax, because you can always Google the syntax and figure it out, but retain the info, get the general syntax. That's like, you want to understand the syntax, but you don't have to memorize every last bit of the code, right? You can do the very same thing that I did today with any language that you're looking to learn. You can plug it into the web development bootcamp that's in Udemy. You can plug it in. Like I used it for learning web development even better, like to get into Node and to React and stuff like that. I was able to use this strategy for Flutter, and then within a short amount of time, we're able to get an app into the App Store, our time cost calculator. So you can employ that like for Java, C#, anything. It's all about getting the reps in. That's the key. That's the goal. All right. So hopefully you found that valuable. If you need me to go into it deeper, let me know. I'd be more than happy to, do some more practice problems. But yeah, let me know. You can catch me on the live stream. If you have questions, you can call in on Tuesday nights where we address, you can call in, you can leave me a question in the chat, whatever the case may be, and I will get your questions answered for you. Okay. But I'm going to wrap it up for today. A little bit longer show, a little bit different than we normally do, as we normally give presentations on different concepts, different careers. But I wanted you to see how my mind works when I am learning a new language and how I employ it, how I practice it, and hopefully that can help you. Okay. Do me a favor on your way out, like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Tell a friend about it who is looking to be in the tech space, who is trying to learn how to code, but they're struggling. This video is for them. Also hit the notification bell so you can know every time that we go live on this channel and drop new content, because I would love to interact with you one-on-one in the chat and see how I can continuously add more value into your life, right? My continuous deployment and continuous integration pipeline is adding value into your life, okay? And if you need more help, if you want to work with me one-on-one, you can go to techcoachdrop.dev. You can sign up for a coaching plan. You can sign up to get exclusive content that you're not going to find anywhere on YouTube. I mean, I have content like this, but we go deeper into it. I have a video in there where I jumped on a call with one of the people that I'm coaching, and we were just trying to figure out different things in Microsoft Azure, right? So that is available to you as well. But with that being said, we are past the midway point of the week. Next week is Christmas. So if I don't talk to you before then, Merry Christmas, and have a Happy New Year's. And yeah, that's about it. That is about it. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is Tech Coach Rock with another episode of Software Explorations, Concepts and Overviews. We are out.
They say just learn to code, it's easy, they proclaim. Machines can solve the world, they got hearts full of flame. But frustration builds up high like data in the sky. Don't you lose your spark, don't wave goodbye. Hello world feels like a mountain high to climb. Syntax errors crashing down across the prime. Keep punching through the walls, those ifs and loops so tight. With every line you write, you'll find your light. You're a code warrior, shining bright in the night. safest bet. Debugging in the dark till the dawn breaks free. Errors pixelate your dreams, but let them be. For every failure learned, a victory is earned. In the machine's great maze, your ways discerned. Every stack of logic you embrace like fire. Lifelong learning never ends, though desires tire. Yet in the lines you weave and future clear is made. No surrender here, bright dreams will never fade. You're a code warrior, shining bright in the night. Break the bugs and fight for dreams inside. You're a code conqueror, don't let them see you sweat. In this digital realm, you're the safest bet.